Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Tumpigie makofi tena ya kumshukuru. Asante na tuketi. Asante. Your Excellency, President Lazarus Chakwera, President of the Republic of Malawi, Your Excellency Monica Chakwera, First Lady of the Republic of Malawi, let me once again thank you, Your Excellency, for taking time, accepting our invitation, and joining us on this Mashujaa Day. And through you, Your Excellency, the Governor of Kirinyaga, let me also thank, through you, the people of Kirinyaga for your hospitality and indeed the warm welcome that we have received to this beautiful county at the footsteps of Mount Kenya. This is the 10th time that we are celebrating our nationhood, identity and diversity away from our capital city of Nairobi. We have previously marked national days in other countries. We have been to Kisumu, Kisii, Nakuru, Kakamega, Narok, Nyeri, Machakos, Meru, and Mombasa. And today we gather here in the county of Kirinyaga to celebrate the makers of our nation. We celebrate all the men and women who laid the foundation stone of our nation, and we also commend all those Kenyans who made and continue to make extraordinary contributions to bring our nation closer to her destiny of being a better, more just, more equitable, and more prosperous nation for all. At independence, the makers of our nation sought to secure a nation devoid of exclusion, disunity, and oppression. Through their hard work, dedication, and sacrifice, today we are a thriving democracy. That generation of nation builders chose hope over pessimism, unity over division, faith over fear, and purposeful sacrifice over narrow interests of the day. When they encountered obstacles, they reminded themselves that an obstacle is what you see when you set your eye off the goal. But like the heroes of faith in the Holy Scriptures, some of those men and women died without beholding our free land or realizing their promise. However, they are immortal, as they will live on in the pillars of the strong and free nation that they built, and in the hearts of eternally grateful generations of Kenyans who followed them. Mashujaa Day is their day, but it is also our day to remember them, to celebrate them, and to renew our commitment to the values upon which our nation was founded. Celebrating Mashujaa Day in Kirinyaga County is significant for a number of reasons. Firstly, this county is named after the mountain of mystery, Kirinyaga. According to traditional folklore, the mountain of mystery was created as God's resting place and a sign of his wonder. After God created the earth, this is where he is said to have rested to admire his workmanship. This mountain, standing tall, was also not just a place of rest and a shrine for worship. It was also a place of renewal, a place of honest conversation, and a place for bonding and reconciliation. We can also note that celebrating Mashujaa Day in Kirinyaga County has a second historical significance, since this county bears the name of this great mountain, and so too our nation. According again to folklore, the naming came from one of the pioneer heroes called Chief Kivoi wa Mwendwa, born 240 years ago in 1780. One of the early colonizers who befriended Chief Kivoi was Dr. Ludwig Krapf, a German missionary from the Anglican Church Missionary Society. And on December 3rd of 1849, Chief Kivoi brought Dr. Krapf to Kirinyaga to behold this mountain of mystery. And when asked through an interpreter what the name of the mountain was, Chief Kivoi told the white fellow that the name of the mountain was Kenya. According to folklore, he pronounced it in a Kamba accent, but what the colonizer heard was Kinya. And from this conversation, the name of our nation, Kenya, was born 200 years ago. Kirinyaga County is therefore at the heart of a very rich heritage as a nation. The development of the then Kirinyaga district, created out of the western part of Embu district in 1963, has closely mirrored that of the wider country, culminating with the advent of devolution. The 20th of October is a significant date in our history because in 1952, this was the day that a state of emergency was declared on our land by the colonizers, and hundreds of our founding fathers were arrested. But when our founding fathers, led by the likes of Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Paul Ngei, Masinde Muliro, amongst others, overcame the darkness of the emergency period, a new order emerged. They had a three-point agenda that resonates to date. They declared war on ignorance, poverty, and disease. And today that war is still on. It is a war we have inherited, and a war that shall also bestow on future generations. The commitment, as declared by our forefathers, is a sacred obligation today, and it is so from one generation to the next. Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, representing the founding fathers, had this to say on the task at hand. And he said, and I quote, that our children will learn about the heroes of the past, but our task is to make ourselves the architects of the future. This is a challenge he posed not only to his generation, but to all Kenyan generations to come. Each generation must not focus only on past heroism, but it must also continuously strive to be the architects of their own brighter future. For us to become architects of the future, we must begin by protecting what was left behind to us by the heroes who liberated this country, and in particular, we were charged with a great responsibility of taking care of our territorial integrity. Since the dawn of our republic, on many occasions, we have experienced territorial aggressions to the sanctity of our borders. Some have been driven from within and others from without. But the message of our founding fathers to these aggressors was simple: not an inch less, not an inch more. And this is the message that must reverberate across the collective quarters that are bent on annexing any part of the territory known as the Republic of Kenya. The resolve of our founding fathers rings as true today as it did then. Not an inch less, not an inch more. And we as Kenyans say this because we are a nation content with our country's bounty and also content with the splendor within our borders. So, fellow Kenyans, the transformation of our security sector has without doubt been one of the most significant endeavors of my administration. We continue to add new arrows in the quiver of our national security by retooling the resources and capacity of our security agencies. This visible transformation of our security organs has been done in honor of their national duty of defending our sovereignty, maintaining our territorial integrity, securing our borders, and preserving our cherished freedoms and our way of life. As an affirmation of this, today, Kenya's police-to-population ratio is at its highest level in our history and is higher than the UN prescribed standard. Similarly, in the last 8 years, we have undertaken the most consequential and expansive modernization of our military in our nation's history. We continue to tool and to retool our security resources to the highest standards in order to keep our people safe and secure and to preserve our territorial integrity in a just, fair, democratic, and safe country for all. But aside to this, we have also invested in the welfare of those charged with our security personnel, which include a review of their remuneration, benefits, and other allowances, upgrading of housing, provision of insurance, and increasing the capacity of the health facilities used by our security personnel. In addition to what we have already done, we are also building an additional 4 hospitals to cater for them and their dependents in recognition of the heavy toll placed on them and their families. Fellow Kenyans, ladies and gentlemen, now I must return to the subject of being architects of the future. When our founding fathers charged us with this task, what they told us is that the future is not a destination out there waiting for us. It is a destination that we create, block by block. It is like an open book that you write, page by page, moment by moment. But you do not realize it until you are met by unexpected challenges. Challenges like COVID-19. And then all of a sudden, you are placed upon the horns of a dilemma. You can either choose to see obstacles in every opportunity or opportunity in every obstacle. This, fellow Kenyans, is the foundation of any successful nation state. It is about choices. Yet, it is in moments like this that the true character of a nation and a people is revealed. I am proud to say that with the COVID-19 crisis, our state of mind as a government has been one of finding opportunities in every problem occasioned by COVID. Instead of focusing on what is, we have focused on what could be. And this optimism by government, coupled with a basket of stimulus instruments, is what has thrust our economy into rapid recovery, while the global economy, we all know, contracted by an average of 3.6% last year. We managed to grow our economy by 0.3% over the same period, and this year it is projected to grow by 6% despite the ravages of COVID. In recognition of the extraordinary and exceptional nature of the pandemic, the government, as the guarantor for enjoyment of social economic rights, issued targeted responses to the pandemic to cushion Kenyans against the effects of the pandemic. My administration made various policy interventions with a view of putting money in the pockets of Kenyans. This included various tax reliefs, an 8-point stimulus program of some Kenya shillings 56.8 billion, and Kazi Mtaani to cushion our youth from COVID-related unemployment and other vulnerabilities. Today, this economic rebound is also reflected in the strong revenue performance, as at the end of September 2021, with the ordinary revenue of our country having increased by some 26.8%. There are many indicators which demonstrate how we took advantage of the opportunities and the problems presented to us by COVID-19, and we shall be elaborating further during our scheduled State of the Nation address in Parliament. But just to make and name a few examples, for instance, the management of the Kenya Meat Commission was replaced during the thick fog of COVID-19. The Department of Defense took 1 year to refurbish the commission and reopened it in April of this year. I am happy to note that in the 6 months, KMC got out of debt and increased the number of head of cattle processed a day from 8 to 185, 23 times what the old KMC used to process. Today, KMC is paying farmers within 72 hours for livestock delivered at a rate of Kenya shillings 185 per kilo for cattle. In fact, the previous commission had paid a total of Kenya shillings 52 million to farmers between the months of April to September 2020. By comparison, the new management of KMC that reopened the plant in April of 2021 has to date, in those short period, paid out a total of Kenya shillings 643 million, representing an increment of over 1,200%. Another area of transformation under the COVID duress is the tea sector. And the story of our tea sector is one that must be told. This sector has been the predatory grounds for cartels for many decades. But it has now been liberated, and its performance has started to improve. On account of the reform measures implemented by my administration, the price of Kenyan tea has increased by 42% in the last 1 year alone, and the minimum auction price of tea now stands at $3 per kilo, the highest price on record for the last 5 years. Indeed, it is expected that our tea farmers will receive a healthy bonus at the end of June 2022, signaling a return to the good old days of Chai Bora, Pesa Bora. In the coffee sector, again, I am pleased to report that the determined efforts of our government to root out corrupt cooperatives that have been predating on our coffee farmers have borne fruit. The revitalization of the new KPCU by government has brought healthy competition into the coffee milling activities. And as a result, farmers in high-yielding areas like here in Kirinyaga are now receiving upward of Kenya shillings 100 per kilogram for their coffee, up from the average Kenya shillings 25 per kilogram in 2019. Milk production is another area, and as part of our efforts to ensure a reasonable rate of return for our dairy farmers, my government introduced a pricing guideline, and this has seen farm gate prices increase from Kenya shillings 27 per litre in January of 2020 to a high of Kenya shillings 40 per litre as of September 2021. On rice, I did, when I visited Kirinyaga last, direct that the Kenya National Trading Corporation purchase all the rice, not only from Wea, but also from Kano Plains, for onward selling to our disciplined forces, prison services, as well as to our boarding schools. And I am pleased to confirm that last year, out of 6 rice cooperatives nationally, Mwea Rice Growers Cooperative sold the most bags of rice to government. And in fact, for every 10 bags sold to government, Kirinyaga farmers sold 7. And out of this, they realized a total revenue of over 1 billion Kenya shillings. And in order to promote our rice farmers, I did direct the Ministry of Agriculture to secure the continued purchase of the upcoming crop so that we can maintain and continue this transformation. But ladies and gentlemen, it is the transformation of our health sector that is probably the most phenomenal testimonies of how we transformed COVID obstacles into opportunities that expanded our health facilities. In Nairobi alone, we have constructed over the period and operationalized 15 level 2 and 3 hospitals in various informal settlements through the Nairobi Metropolitan Service. And there are another 15 currently under construction. One of the unintended benefits of the pandemic is that we have increased, as a country, our ICU capacity by an impressive 502%, from 180 to 651 ICU-ready beds across the country. And similarly, our total hospital bed capacity as a country has increased by 47%, from 56,069 in the year 2013 to the current figure of 82,291 hospital beds spread throughout the country. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we have improved our oxygen generation capacity in all our public health facilities from 3 million liters per day in March of 2020 to 32 million liters per day in October of 2021. We have further increased the number of reference laboratories that can test for notifiable diseases of international concern and public health importance from one single laboratory in March of 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic to what we have today, which stands at 95. Fellow Kenyans, I just wish to remind you that at the beginning of the pandemic last year, we used to ship our samples for testing in South Africa, and the result turnaround time would be anything up to 5 days onwards. Today, we have our own capacity. These strategic diagnostic investments have strengthened the country's healthcare system, especially in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and will propel us faster towards the attainment of universal health coverage and fortify our country's preparedness for future global health security challenges. The health workforce is a key pillar of every healthcare system, yet many times it turns out to be the weakest link, typically seen as a cost driver instead of an area for public and private investment in health service provision. In a bid to bridge the gap in human resources for health, the government has progressively recruited an additional 36,900 healthcare workers in the last 9 years, bringing total public health workforce to what it is today, 75,000 health workers. The mid-level healthcare worker plays a critical part and role in the health service delivery throughout all levels of care, specifically at the primary care level. And to this extent, we have expanded the capacity of our medical training colleges to train this critical mass of health experts from 28 KMTC campuses in 2013 to the current 71 campuses spread across 44 of our 47 counties. My administration has also put in place a comprehensive nationwide program to upgrade selected hospitals in all the 47 counties through provision of specialized modern state-of-the-art medical, diagnostic, and critical care equipment. Through the Managed Equipment Services project, whose objective was to improve access to quality specialized healthcare services throughout our country. Under this project, we have identified and equipped 115 hospitals with various theater equipment, 101 hospitals with various radiological and imaging equipment, 14 facilities with ICU equipment, and 54 facilities installed and commissioned renal equipment for dialysis. Through this massive investment, 628,000 people have benefited from theater services, 587,000 people have benefited from dialysis out of the 577 dialysis machines installed, and 23,574 people have benefited from ICU services, and over 5.7 million Kenyans have been served using the 22 MRI machines, the 214 X-ray machines, the 83 CT scanners, and the 229 ultrasound equipment that we have installed in various hospitals. All these some investments have so far benefited over 6 million patients and saved our country an equivalent of 131 billion shillings. Ladies and gentlemen, just the other day, I opened the integrated Molecular Imaging Center at Kenyatta University Hospital. This is not just a first for Kenya, but for our entire sub-region. As a result, many of our citizens suffering from cancer will now have the benefit of early detection, leading to early treatment and cure, thus saving many lives. This, in addition to the millions of shillings that families who would have been forced to travel abroad seeking treatment for their loved ones will now save. 3 other areas have thrived despite the COVID dispensation. The first one is our robust infrastructure development. And indeed, to celebrate our Mau Mau liberators, a 582-kilometer road called the Mau Mau Road is under construction in their honor. And this will be the single longest road constructed in Kenya since independence. It runs through Meru County, from Kieni to Mara, through Embu County, from Kairore to Irangi, through Tharaka County, from Kibuga to Itunguro, and in central Kenya, it runs from Mudhidhi to Kiangwashe, and from Kembe to Mogumo Road. This is longer than the Nairobi-Mombasa Highway by 140 kilometers, and it follows the warpath taken by our Mau Mau liberators as they fought the colonizers. And once complete, travelers on these roads will be able to connect to various parts of the country without necessarily having to pass through Nairobi. Another piece of infrastructure that I believe would make our founding fathers proud is the Nairobi Expressway. This is the largest expressway in Africa, stretching a total of 27 kilometers, running from Mulolongo in Machakos County to Rironi in Kiambu County. And from Rironi, plans are underway for another dual carriage that will soon be launched that shall run all the way to Mau Summit, traversing the Rift Valley. In total, we have had 7,991 kilometers of new tarmac road with an additional 4,800 kilometers currently under construction. The major flagship road projects include the Isiolo Mandera Road, Garissa Nuno Mudogashi Wajir Road, Lokicha, Lodwa, Lokitang, Nakadok Road, the dueling of the Kenol Sagana Marua Road, the expansion of the Mombasa Mariakani Road, the Garsen Witu Lamu Road, the expansion of Makupa Bridge and approach roads, the expansion of the Athi River Machakos Turnoff Road, the Ahero Kisii Sibania Road, the Kibwezi Mtomo Kitui Road, and the reconstruction of the Kitale Kapenguria Lodwa Nakadok Road to the border with South Sudan, to name but a few. The second area that has also thrived during the last 2 years is the digitization of our economy as a measure of improved governance. In keeping with being architects of their own future, young people drawn from all over the Republic are the driving force behind seminal programs that will revolutionize the way we conduct business in our country. This is a project that has been dearest to my heart, especially in being blessed with the opportunity of engaging and working and seeing the potential of our young men and women when given an opportunity. I will elaborate on this on another occasion, but today permit me to focus primarily on the land sector. For 125 years, our land registry was manually managed and very messy. In fact, some of this mess was deliberate, engineered to facilitate land theft and corruption. But with the help of this youth-led team, we have begun the process of digitizing the land registry. And what has surprised us, as we reference title deeds with geographical coordinates, is the historical fraud that has existed in our land sector. We have found private land titles to roundabouts in major highways, private land titles on airport runways, and all of this because titles were issued without reference to geographical coordinates, or what experts call georeferencing. To stop land fraud, therefore, we are now in the process of cleaning all title deeds to ensure they have a corresponding geographical coordinate, and this will help stamp out the fake title deeds and restore the sanctity of the title deed as envisioned by our founding fathers. The major advantage in digitizing our land registry under the system now known as Ardhi Sasa is that where it took you a minimum of 6 months to do a single land transaction, this has now been reduced to 48 hours or 2 days in the registries that we have digitized. Where once it took 1 and sometimes 3 months to obtain an official land search, the Ardhi Sasa system will give you a land search result in 3 to 5 minutes. And now, with digitization, we have the platform to ensure that every inch of Kenya is mapped and all areas eligible for allocation and issuance of titles have an accurate, secure, and fraud-free system of issuance. It is my belief that after digitization, issues of land titling will be sorted out once and for all. And I say so because my administration has already issued 5.3 million titles under the manual registry in only 8 years. That is equivalent to the number of title deeds issued by the colonizers and the first 3 administrations combined in a total of 125 years. So I believe that if we have achieved 5.3 million titles in 8 years under an archaic system, how much more will we be able to achieve once the national system is completely digitized? Added to this, we have taken the independence-era dream of decent, affordable shelter and used policy instruments and incentives to make it a reality. One such intervention is that anyone registered as a pensioner can withdraw up to 40% of their pension and use it to get a housing mortgage. Additionally, we have exempted first-time mortgage holders from payment on stamp duty, and in addition to a range of incentives for developers who build units under the Affordable Housing Program. Further, and on digitizing our economy, in April of 2013, during my first few months as president, I directed the National Treasury to conduct a detailed survey of all chargeable government services to ascertain how many of these services were paid through digital means. The survey found that over a third of all payments to government were cash-based, presenting a high opportunity for leakage and abuse of the system. In one case, 60% of revenues were spent on making collections. By launching the e-Citizen platform in August of 2014, 350 government services have now been migrated to the e-Citizen platform. And in the 7 years since its inception, the e-Citizen has served a total of 27.2 million unique customers and collected over Kenya shillings 87.1 billion in revenues. Fellow Kenyans, our forefathers' quest for a just and fair nation for all will only be truly realized when we have every single service delivered through a transparent and accountable channel. Therefore, digitization is an important part of our endeavor to improve delivery of government services. Digitization aims to eliminate the duplication of efforts in data collection, processing, storage, and production of identification documents, which has been a feature of government operations since the dawn of our republic. Our policy interventions will also enhance the security of the current ID card through the implementation of a microchip electronic identity card that mitigates against emerging security threats such as identity theft, fraud in financial transactions, and the creation of false identities that are utilized in terrorism and other major crimes. This improved identity card will also be used as a secure travel document within the East African region. To those of you, my friends, who are used to analog systems in order to facilitate corruption, I tell you that the end is nigh, notwithstanding how many court orders you procure, hii itafika mwisho. To all Kenyans, for us to achieve most of these things under the COVID restrictions, I want to thank you. Without your civic responsibility, innovation, and resilience, none of this would have been made possible. From very early in the COVID crisis, I appeal to you to be your brother's keeper and to exercise restraint as we navigate through this unfamiliar enemy. And all of you, each and every Kenyan, made us proud by doing this. The vision of our forefathers was a nation free of ignorance. The remnants of ignorance will only be uprooted from our midst when we continuously build the capacity of our citizens to remain abreast with the demands for a rapidly changing world. It is against this backdrop that we instituted reforms in our education sector that led to the introduction of the competency-based curriculum, or CBC. As a mark of this seminal transition, we now have 2 cohorts of children in pre-primary and 5 cohorts of our children in primary school who are the pioneers of this groundbreaking curriculum. The grade 5 cohort has only 1 year to go before they join junior secondary school or grade 7. In total, we note that over 8.1 million children are now part of the program. As a caring government and one that appreciates the solemn duty of the state to prepare every child for their destiny, we will continue enriching the curriculum to ensure that our children sharpen their talent and maximize their opportunities in keeping with our vision for a holistic growth of every child in Kenya. And to ensure that we adequately prepare the country for the next phase of CBC, which is the junior high school, and to further facilitate the 100% transition from primary to secondary, I hereby order and direct as follows: that the Ministry of Education, jointly with the Ministry of Interior and the National Treasury, shall establish a framework for the construction of over 10,000 classrooms needed to provide the additional learning space for the 1 million new students set to join junior secondary. That the National Treasury engages Parliament to appropriate 8 billion shillings towards the construction of classrooms, and that the construction of these classrooms be undertaken by local contractors within the vicinity of each school so as to provide further stimulus to local economy, and that the payments for the construction of the said classrooms be remitted directly to the contractors in their respective sub-counties. This initiative will tap into the skilled manpower within the counties, empowering locals with enhanced economic opportunity. And fellow Kenyans, to address the gap of the remaining 10,000 classrooms across the country, I call upon all members of the National Assembly to stand together in solidarity with our children by prioritizing allocation of the CDF towards school infrastructure. The timely program provides additional momentum to my administration's prioritization that no child is left behind in the transition from primary to secondary school. Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to build back better, we are witnessing recovery in the economy, with its rebound being attested by all leading economic indicators. They all point to a stronger economic recovery beginning in the present year. This rebound is a result of the gradual reopening of our economy, especially the service sector, coupled with stronger global demand. This recovery is reflected, as I said earlier, in the strong revenue performance for the quarter ending September 2021, which saw our ordinary revenue increase by 25.8% and amounted to Kenya shillings 441.8 billion, amounting to a collection of Kenya shillings 17 billion above the target that had been set. The first and second stimulus packages were designed by my government to ensure that our economy would endure the shocks occasioned by the lockdown measures implemented in the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. With significant progress registered in the containment of COVID-19, I believe it is now time to shift our focus from survival to coexisting with the disease. And in that regard, my administration will be rolling out the third financial stimulus program designed to accelerate the pace of our economic growth and to sustain the gains that we have already made. I announce, therefore, that effective the 1st of November 2021, new stimulus programs targeting the key productive and service sectors in 13 strategic interventions that cover agriculture, health, education, drought response, policy, infrastructure, financial inclusion, energy, and environmental conservation. The first intervention is the tea subsector. To safeguard the gains made by the tea subsector, the National Treasury will allocate 1 billion shillings to support the fertilizer subsidy for our small-scale tea farmers. The second intervention is in the sugar subsector. To safeguard the livelihoods of farmers within our nation's sugar belt, I direct the National Treasury to allocate an additional 1.5 billion shillings in aid of the sugar sector that will be appropriated towards factory maintenance and payment of farmer arrears. The third intervention is the coffee subsector. In acknowledgement of the pace of the ongoing reforms in the subsector, the National Treasury to allocate 1 billion shillings to the Ministry of Agriculture to be appropriated towards the completion of the ongoing interventions in the coffee subsector. The fourth intervention is the livestock sector. Noting the effects of the ongoing drought situation, the National Treasury to allocate 1.5 billion to support the communities affected by the ongoing drought, especially in our ASAL counties, as part of our national livestock offtake program. The fifth, also applying to the livestock sector, and in order to secure a reduction in the prices of animal feeds, I direct the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture jointly with the National Treasury, to issue within 7 days a framework that will facilitate the reduction of the cost of animal and chicken feeds. The sixth intervention is in education. As I have said earlier, and noting the success of our administration's policy on 100% transition from primary to secondary education, Kenya shillings 8 billion to the Ministry of Education for the CBC Infrastructure Expansion Program. The seventh intervention is in health, and to ensure access to medical coverage across our nation, and as part of our universal health coverage program, the Ministry of Health will move with speed to establish an additional 50 new Level 3 hospitals to be situated in non-covered areas and densely populated areas across our nation. And I further direct the National Treasury to allocate a sum of 3.2 billion shillings for the immediate construction of these medical facilities, again, using local contractors so that the effect is also felt on the ground, uko mashinani. The eighth intervention is the National Sanitation Program. We started this program to harness the energy of our young people and to give them a buffer against COVID-related unemployment. Noting the success of Kazi Mtaani program and its effect in enhancing opportunities for youth across the country, we direct the National Treasury to allocate Kenya shillings 10 billion for the third phase of Kazi Mtaani to be rolled out in all counties, with priority being given to densely populated areas. The above measures should inject an additional 25 billion shillings into our economy. These new initiatives complement ongoing state interventions that are expected to sustain the momentum of recovery within the year's growth rate projected to be at 6%. The ninth intervention is on energy and petroleum. Being fully aware of the positive strides being made in our economic recovery, the gain stands the risk of being eroded by high energy prices. And to address the plight of our people, I do direct that the Ministry of Petroleum and Mining, jointly with the National Treasury, to develop by the 24th of December a framework for stabilization of petroleum prices so as to cushion Kenyans against the turbulence caused by the current volatility in fuel prices, and that B, the Ministry of Energy shall secure the full implementation of the report of the Presidential Task Force on review of power purchase agreements that establishes a pathway for the reduction of electricity prices by 30% by or before the 24th of December this year. I look forward to Kenyans being relieved of the burden of high tariffs by Christmas Day. The 10th intervention is in the banking sector. The transformation of our economy and the emergence of our nation as a financial hub is as a result of the efficiency secured by technology. The gains we have made in digitization of our financial processes and transactions have made it possible for us to better track and trace illicit flows of money. In view of these, we remain committed to the anti-money laundering and the combating of financing of terrorism CFT frameworks stipulated by the Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act, POCALMA. These include the requirement for financial institutions to report cash transactions above US $10,000. However, it should also be recognized that the implementation of the framework by banks has been onerous for micro, small, and medium enterprises, and cash still remains an important payment channel for MSMEs, representing 80% of all their financial transactions. Therefore, accordingly, the implementation of the cash transaction requirement by banks has not been facilitative of the operations of MSMEs and to some extent has inhibited their growth. And in this regard, I further order the National Treasury, after consultation with other stakeholders, to immediately cause the upward revision of the cash transaction reporting threshold from the current mark of 1 million shillings, applicable to both withdrawals and deposits by customers. The financial institutions, however, will retain their reporting obligations to the Financial Reporting Center. The 11th intervention is to access to credit. Over the last decade, we have developed a robust credit information sharing mechanism for the banking sector, which enables Kenyans develop a credit history to enable them access to cheaper credit. This is an important pillar for pricing of loans. The COVID-19 pandemic, however, has adversely impacted businesses, particularly MSMEs, and as one of the COVID-19 emergency measures, we did previously suspend the listing with credit reference bureaus of borrowers whose loans were non-performing at the beginning of the pandemic. This suspension lasted for 6 months, from April to September of 2020, and provided relief, particularly to medium, small, and micro enterprises during the pandemic period. However, some of the MSMEs continue to struggle to get back to a sound footing following the adverse effects of the pandemic. So in that regard, and to further augment the interventions that we are making to give micro, small, and medium enterprises reprieve, I further order the National Treasury, in consultation with stakeholders, to secure the following additional measures to provide further space for recovery of micro, small, and medium enterprises. That the relevant authorities will, for loans less than 5 million, effect a moratorium of listings in CRBs for a period of 12 months to the end of September 2022. And further, borrowers with loans below 5 million and below, listed on the CRB from October 2020 to date, will not have that listing incorporated in their credit reports for the next 12 months ending September 2022. In addition to foregoing measures and to accelerate our economic recovery, I also urge all banks and financial institutions to accommodate customers who seek to restructure their banking facilities. The 12th intervention is digital financial services. In recognition of the importance of digital financing services, especially to the small-scale traders and the household at large, I do direct the National Treasury to engage all digital payment providers with an aim of deepening and expanding the use of the digital payment channels so that people can save more on their wallets and use them more. The 13th intervention is in the area of vaccine production. If there is anything that we have learned, not only as Kenyans but as Africans, from the COVID-19 pandemic, is the essence of self-reliance. As the first step towards this goal, we as a government have established a company to facilitate this venture in the name of Kenya Biovax Limited, and therefore the Ministry of Health should operationalize this company to build a form and fill and eventually manufacture vaccines in our country by Easter of next year. Fellow Kenyans, on the 29th of June, 2021, during my 16th address on the COVID-19 pandemic, I pledged to the nation that by Christmas this year, we would have vaccinated over 10 million adults. Today, I am pleased to confirm to the nation that we are on course to realize this target. As of today, we have vaccinated 5 million adults. Owing to the compliance with the health protocols and guidelines on COVID-19, I have further noted with much appreciation that surge of infections has declined over the last 2 weeks, as characterized by the positivity rate of below 5% that has been registered over this period. I once again want to thank the people of Kenya for exercising an admirable degree of civic responsibility in this fight and truly being their brother's keepers. It is, however, important for all of us to appreciate that we are not yet out of the woods, and we must therefore continue to observe the containment measures as directed by the Ministry of Health, as this is the only way to sustain the gains we are making and guarantee the full reopening of our economy. I want to, at this juncture, particularly thank our Interfaith Council for their cooperation in steering the resumption of in-person and congregational worship, and indeed all our health workers and security officers for their commitment to duty during this particularly difficult time. So, fellow Kenyans, the National Emergency Response Committee on COVID-19 and the National Security Council have continued to monitor the evolution of the disease situation within our borders. And therefore, given the progress in containing this disease, the committee, jointly with the Council, has recommended a review of the existing containment measures. Accordingly, the number of persons gathering for in-person worship is now reviewed upwards from 1/3 of the congregants to 2/3, provided they adhere to all the health protocols. In the same regard, and by the authority vested in me as President, I hereby order and direct that the nationwide dusk to dawn curfew that has been in effect from the 27th of March 2020 be and is hereby vacated with immediate effect. Asante sana, God bless you, and God bless you. Asanteni sana.
Basi kwa heshima naomba sote tusimame kwa ajili ya wimbo wa taifa. Ninaomba kwa heshima sote tusimame tafadhali kwa ajili ya wimbo wa taifa. Wacha malize ndio.
Asanteni sana. Baada ya hotuba ya Mheshimiwa Rais, nitaomba tuwe watulivu ili tuweze kutangaziwa itifaki ya kuondoka. Nitaomba kuomba Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta, Rais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya, na Mheshimiwa Bi Margaret Kenyatta wataondoka kwanza, na wale wengine tuwe watulivu ili tuweze kuongozwa katika itifaki. Tumhe nafasi Mheshimiwa Rais anapoondoka. Wale wengine wote tutatulia hadi tupewe itifaki ya kuondoka, the exit protocol. Anaondoka sasa Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta na Mheshimiwa Bi Margaret Kenyatta. Wale wengine tuwe watulivu tafadhali. Tutulie ili tuweze kuongozwa. Atakayefuata ni Mheshimiwa Daktari Lazarus Chakwera, Rais wa Jamhuri ya Malawi, na Bi Monica.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The curfew that has been in place for the last year and a half of the COVID pandemic has been vacated by President Uhuru Kenyatta. And that is, as he said, it is time for the nation to move from simply surviving to reviving the economy again. Let me repeat that the dusk to dawn curfew that has been in place, that is from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. in the morning, has been vacated, and that President Uhuru Kenyatta says is to move the economy forward after having stagnated on account of the COVID pandemic. That is only one of the measures he announced this morning and part of the afternoon. The other is that he also unveiled measures to do with how we shall stimulate as a nation the economy, and said that 8 billion shillings will go towards the construction of 10,000 classrooms. That is to accommodate the 1 million who will be moving on in school in the next year. And then he said 50 new level 3 hospitals are to be constructed, and that will involve local contractors so that the effects are felt all the way from the top to the bottom. He's also spoken on issues to do with the banking sector and those with loans less than 5 million shillings and who've been listed on the CRB as having defaulted, and that is from October of 2020, have been given reprieve. That shall not be reflected in their credit scores, their credit records, and he's also that stays in effect ending September 2022. He's also spoken on the question of COVID-19 and vaccination production, and he says by Easter next year the country should be manufacturing, its own vaccines. As for worshippers, 2/3 of congregants shall now be allowed to gather for worship. And that is in addition to his announcement that the curfew that has been in place for the last year and a half has been vacated. Now, with me in studio, I still have the very good gentlemen who have stayed with me, Dismas. Thank you for staying with me, as well as Ishmael, advocate of the High Court, political risk analyst. Gentlemen, what do you make of the speeches that were made? Let's start with President Uhuru Kenyatta's address to the nation. Dismas.
Well, obviously, the big thing is about the curfew. So now we go back to a 24-hour economy. And I suspect people in the hospitality sector are now breaking into a dance and song. Because, closing your business earlier has been a bit of a frustration. So we now go back to a full economy. But one hopes that as we go now back to a full economy, we'll still be sure to maintain the protocols. Because if you don't maintain the protocols, then it means in the next few months, we'll go back to where we've just come from. That is number one. The number two, which in my view is bigger than the curfew, is the cost of energy in Kenya. It's given the National Treasury and the Ministry of Petroleum and Mining a deadline for 24th to ensure that power goes down by 30%, which would make Kenya very competitive. But on the cost of fuel, I think it missed an opportunity because it speaks about stabilization of the price. But the elephant in the room as far as the cost of fuel goes is the taxation. So in my view, he would have addressed the issue of taxation. Then when you go back to the beginning of his speech, it seems to be giving the military a lot of credit for transforming many institutions. Like for instance, the Nairobi Metropolitan Service, the high number of healthcare facilities, the many hospitals which are coming up, and then as well as the Kenya Meat Commission. Now, when the president gives the military and other associated persons credit for doing amazing work. And in my view, the military must be given credit, especially on Kenya Meat Commission. There are livestock farmers now getting paid within 72 hours. And in the past, you gave a comparison of about 52 million and 600 million right now. So the big question remains, we had a horrible management at the Kenya Meat Commission. They were kicked out. Then you have disciplined folks who are able to deliver on time. So it's actually the president again admitting that his own public servants outside the military, that his own public servants are unable to run Kenya the way he expects them to do. And then how many more Kenya Meat Commissions do we have? And how many more Nairobi Metropolitan Services do we have that are, when entrusted to the normal public servants, they go there probably and mismanage the place? So is there a chance that if you give Kenya power to the military, we'll see miracles in that sector? So that is something that he did not address. And then, of course, he spoke about tea, which is a very good thing, saying that on average, the prices have gone up by 42%. Now, coming from a tea growing region, that is very excited. So it seems to me, again, the people who are managing KTDA, this time around, they're not public servants. They're private sector organizations. Okay. So it also seems that there's been a bit of mischief. And we now need to give credit to Irungu Nyakera and company for an amazing job.
All right. Wakili, let me get your sentiments. Did it seem to you like he's listened to Kenyans, he's heard the issues they've had over the last year and a half?
Yeah. When you talk about curfew, yes. Because, I mean, he has seen that it's not going to work anyway. You got all these public rallies where multitudes of people are coming in to listen to political rallies and presidential hopefuls and politicians. I mean, it wasn't working to keep people at home. But just as much as he has said that now there is no curfew, remember we are on our own now. Mama is not going to follow you. You've traveled on your own. You've gone. Go take care of yourself. So there is huge responsibility on Kenyans to get vaccinated, to keep distance, to wash their hands, and to protect themselves. But what actually caught my attention, Olive, is the inability to end these state and judiciary kind of divisions. I mean, when he says we will go on to implement this or that, with whether there are so many number of court orders. I mean, you still see that there is no willingness to come back and say, okay, fine, we need to find a way whereby instead of saying we will do this regardless of the court orders, he can say, hey, where's the Minister for Internal Security or Minister for Foreign Affairs or whichever minister? Go and study how we can obey the court orders and still implement this particular issue. So there is still this lack of appreciation of separation of powers. And then when you come to the issues of money laundering and digital improvement in our country and removing us from analog state, what the president is saying clearly is we cannot go back and still continue telling people you have to operate in analog systems. We have now gone digital. And when you talk about Huduma number, instead of crying about it, we must find a way how we can